joined by Manqoba Mchunu, who has been monitoring events today. So, Manqoba, Andre Gam saying that the president is going to be speaking in April. Why is it important for the Commission to hear from the president?
Well, Sally, it is very important for the Commission to hear from the President. Of course, you'll remember that this particular commission, or this hearing rather, Sally, is looking at particularly what led to the unrest that we saw in July last year. And the pivotal question to this was, in fact, is the question that could this have been avoided? And did government take enough measures to try and quell the violence that we saw? Of course, we do know that over 300 people died as a result of the violence. And so the pertinent question is, was government really aware of what was happening on the ground? Was there enough intelligence that was provided to government? Of course, we have heard from other ministers who have taken to the stand there at the hearings. First, disputing the fact that he had received any form of intelligence leading to this particular unrest. In fact, it says the last time he had received any intelligence from the police structures themselves was in December in 2020. And since then, he says that he had never received any intelligence either from the State Security Agency or the police. And we did also hear the minister or the former minister of State Security Agency disputing what Cele had to say before the commission, saying that in fact the State Security Agency had in fact provided that intelligence to police, and that there were regular meetings that were held where that information was shared. And of course, what Ayanda went on to say was the fact that she also had updated the president on regular occasions about this particular unrest that was brewing in the country. She says that the only time that she stopped doing this was when the Director General of the State Security Agency had gone then to say that he's going to be providing this particular information to the president. So it's really important to hear what the president has to say as to whether or not he did knew of what was going to happen, and what measures did government take, what measures did the president try to take to try and prevent this from happening. So it is very important for him to give his testimony. You also recall that he has appointed a panel of experts to look into this particular matter. So those are the questions that he really has to answer to, of course, as to whether or not this could have been avoided and whether government's reaction to it was enough. Of course, at this particular point, we have heard testimony that it was simply not enough. But take a listen to what the commission chair had to say about this particular appearance of the president on the 1st of April.
The hearing panel will reconvene on Friday, the 1st of April 2022, when the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, will appear and give evidence in regard to the July 2021 unrest. The Commission, the South African Human Rights Commission, will keep members of the media informed of all developments so that you can also inform the public in that regard.
All right, so that's going to happen in April. We'll hear from the president. Today, we heard testimony from Media Monitoring Africa that was William Bird, who obviously looks at what came out in the media at that time. He spoke about government's failure to act on time. Tell us a little more.
Indeed, Sally. In fact, William Bird saying that according to some of the monitoring that they'd done on social media, it was quite clear that government simply did not have a clue of what was happening on the ground when the unrest began in July last year. He says that from what it appears like is that, there were no soldiers, there were no police at the time when the unrest started. And this seems to suggest that government was really caught napping at a time of a crisis. He says that, in fact, the only time that we saw some sort of reaction from government was when the media went to cover these events, when they were broadcasted by the media. And this is when we really saw some sort of action from government. We did see those press statements and those briefings that were taking place at that particular point. But what he says is that this simply points to the fact that government was caught unprepared, and that simply this is the reason why we saw this sort of reaction that we saw from government, this delayed reaction that we saw from government. And he says that this is what actually made the situation worse, the fact that government was simply not aware what was happening in the ground. But take a listen to what he had to say on this particular issue.
In this case of this violence, it's clear whether there was a coordinated attack by one or small group of people, but it is clear from just the examples that we've put in our submission, that wasn't just something that magically happened. You know, you may have got someone who mistakenly said, I've seen that rapist is down there. But you know that there are people that think about these things that go and they do it in order to undermine trust. And you can see that the nature of many of those, of that content, and if you look at the networks and how those things were structured, this wasn't just a haphazard, oh, oopsie, we did this off our own bat. There was definitely a planned, coordinated process to some of that content.
William Bird also went into more detail about the role of social media. Tell us more.
Also, indeed, he says that social media was used, in fact, to fuel violence that you saw during the unrest. And of course, this is not the first time that we're hearing such evidence. Before this hearing, you recall that on Wednesday we did hear from one of the digital companies that had also been tasked to look into this particular issue, alluding to the fact that there seemed to have been some people that were fueling some of the violence that we saw. And this happened through what he says is misinformation as well as disinformation. And so what this really speaks to is the false information that was given on some of these media platforms, on some of these tweets by those who were seemingly sympathetic or supporting the former President Jacob Zuma. He quoted quite a number of tweets, including one from an account that seemingly is that of his son, Duduzane Zuma, where he was calling for the country to burn, saying that it is such utterances, it is such tweets that actually fueled this violence, that created a sense of anxiety, a sense of panic, and a sense of fear among the people, but also some people really not knowing and false statements, and also
all right. Manqoba, we are
hate speech and where communities were on what was really happening on the ground. So he said,
all right, Manqoba, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but we are losing your line. Let's just take that last sound clip that you have lined up for us.
The second group of posts that were reported to Real 411 spoke directly to incitement to violence. So there was the one that said, burn everything forces. President Zuma was sent to prison by thugs in robes who take bribes. Burn everything, we must find the addresses of judges. So that was a pretty damn insightful tweet, but what was interesting is Real 411, we used the legal definition of incitement, and that it didn't quite meet the criteria because there was no direct time and date as to when. So for incitement you have to be very clear and very direct, and it didn't meet that criteria, but clearly suggesting that judges are thugs and that they take bribes and that they should be located could lead easily to further violence and harm.
All right, so that's the latest information coming from those human rights hearings. Thank you so much, Manqoba Mchunu, just bringing us up to speed on what was happening today as the Human Rights Commission hears from various people about what happened in July last year, and of course the news that the President will be attending and appearing before that commission in, or rather those hearings, in April.